Welcome to the biggest what ifs in the theme park industry, episode 3. If you haven't seen the first 2 episodes, they'll be linked down below and in the end screen. But for now, let's get into the first what if scenario. Poke the meme dealer. What if Cedar Fair never shut down Geauga Lake? Geauga Lake is a very interesting case, and it's not one of Cedar Fair's brightest moments. Geauga Lake opened in 1889, and there's too much history to go into for that park in this video, but long story short, Six Flags bought that park and then combined it with SeaWorld across the lake to make one big mega park called Six Flags Worlds of Adventure. Six Flags promptly expanded this park way too fast and tried to turn it into a competitor for Cedar Fair's nearby Cedar Point. But eventually, they ended up putting the park up for sale, and Cedar Fair took advantage, buying the park in 2004. This was an interesting move, and from the beginning, the future didn't look too bright for Geauga Lake. Firstly, Cedar Fair removed the animal exhibits from the SeaWorld side, or formerly SeaWorld side, because they had no interest and experience dealing with animals at a theme park. This hurt for fans of the park, but the move made sense. Cedar Fair then decided to take out a few of the roller coasters and just scale down the park in general, making it more of a family park. They also opened a water park a few years later. Unfortunately though, in the meantime, attendance dropped. It's kind of crazy actually, because the park went from seeing about 2 million guests a year to 700,000, and 700,000 isn't a terrible number for a small local park, but that drop off was concerning, and that was just a trend for how Geauga Lake would end. Eventually, in 2007, Cedar Fair sold the park 4 days after the park's season ended that year, which was a puzzling and just rude move. Cedar Fair is sometimes good and sometimes bad when it comes to ride closures, but this park closing was really bad. They didn't even allow the park fans an opportunity to say goodbye. Wildwater Kingdom, the water park, stayed open until 2016, but now that is gone too. So the question has come up, did Cedar Fair buy this park just to shut it down? I think this purchase of Geauga Lake, then Six Flags Worlds of Adventure, was twofold for them. If the park succeeded, then awesome. If it didn't, well, they got rid of a competitor for their flagship park. The purchase of the Paramount Parks in 2006 probably didn't help either, but we'll get to the Paramount Parks a little bit later. In the meantime, what if Cedar Fair hadn't shut down this park? To be honest, by now in 2023, I don't think this park would have much to offer the way it was trending and the way Cedar Fair was treating it. I'd be worried that we would see another Michigan's Adventure, a park that has potential, but just isn't getting the same amount of investment as other parks in the Cedar Fair chain. Certainly not as much as the other parks in Ohio would have. The bottom line is that I don't really see this park having much improvement, especially with Kings Island and Cedar Point in the same state, even though I know that those are for very different demographics. Maybe Geauga Lake could have found a niche as that family park in Ohio, but to be honest, I just don't really see it. Fry Guy. What if Six Flags Magic Mountain had been sold off instead of Darien Lake? So, to answer this question, we're going to have to go back in history once again to get the proper context. So, the story in a brief manner goes like this. In 2006, Mark Shapiro and Six Flags wanted to offload one or more of their parks to get rid of some of their debt. One of the parks they put on the chopping block was Six Flags Magic Mountain, and they did get some offers for the park, both from other theme park developers and real estate developers, but none of them were good enough for Mark Shapiro and Six Flags. Magic Mountain was a part of a package that would have included other parks like Wild Waves, Elitch Gardens, and Darien Lake, but instead, Six Flags ended up selling Wild Waves, Darien Lake, and Elitch Gardens along with Frontier City for $312 million. Of course, now they've retained the operations for 2 of those 4 parks, but that was the move they took to eliminate some of their debt instead of selling off Magic Mountain. A few years ago, Airtime Thrills made a video about what would have happened to each coaster at Magic Mountain if this park had been sold off, so I'll link that video down below because it's a good breakdown, and ultimately I won't cover all that here, but I do think generally that Six Flags made the right decision. Of course, it's kind of funny now because they operate Darien Lake once again, but I think they made the right call sticking with Magic Mountain. This is one of their flagships and a park they can always invest more into, and it's become one of the biggest parks in Southern California, which is no easy feat given all the parks down there. This park now has 20 roller coasters, and while I've yet to personally visit, they have the best coaster lineup in California by far. And evidently, this park is very profitable because not too long ago, Six Flags changed this park to have year-round operations just like the other parks in Southern California. Magic Mountain is an amazing park, and for Six Flags, it's arguably their best. So what if they'd sold this park off instead of Darien Lake? That's the question. Without this park, Valencia probably wouldn't be as big as it is today. I gotta imagine that this park brings in a lot of revenue for the city with all those people coming in to visit this park. I would also think that a bunch of the park's roller coasters would have been relocated to other Six Flags parks. To tie it in, Darien Lake would have probably gotten one of those roller coasters. So overall, while it's interesting to think about, I don't think Six Flags Darien Lake would have brought in the same amount of money to the Six Flags chain that Six Flags Magic Mountain has over the years. I don't even think it would be close. Bottom line is I think they made the right decision in multiple facets. Wags 360. What if Six Flags had a budget like Disney? This is one I didn't see coming and I like it, but I kind of have a lame answer to it. My answer would be, well, we'd see more investment. If you look at Disney, while some of their additions have been very meh, they have some additions that have been very good in recent years, or somewhat recent years. Cars Land and Galaxy's Edge cost about $1 billion, I believe, each, so Disney needs money to make lands like that. Of course, here's the major difference between the two chains. If Six Flags had that budget, would they use it to make highly detailed lands? No, probably not. Maybe there are some small theme sections, but overall I think this money would be used to add major thrill rides because that has ultimately been the focus of Six Flags. And even though I know Salim Basul is trying to change this, with that budget, I think he would still add some major thrill rides. Now, then I wonder about RMC. RMC has been a great company for Six Flags to work with in recent years because they can provide a good coaster experience, in fact, a great coaster experience, for a lower cost. Because Six Flags has been the quote-unquote discount chain, they have added lots of roller coasters from RMC, and they've really become invaluable to Six Flags. Because of this, would the relationship between the two be this strong if Six Flags had a bigger budget? And would we see a Giga-type coaster from Six Flags? I do think that we would have seen more record breakers over the years, whether that's a Giga or whether it's another type of record, if Six Flags had a bigger budget. Overall, I know one thing for sure, us coaster enthusiasts would not have been complaining. Alt coasters. What if the DIN Corporation didn't exist, and how would that affect the number of coasters available for RMC to convert? Speaking of RMC, this is a great question though, I really like it. Firstly, I've got to note that I am not including the Beast from Kings Island as a coaster from the DIN Corporation. That coaster was built in-house and it was just designed by Charles Din. That coaster is insane for today's standards, but for 1979 it's even more bonkers. But the DIN Corporation was founded in 1982 and it lasted until 1993. So not very long. Even still, some of the roller coasters were very notable, and 3 of them have been RMC'd so far. Those would be Twisted Cyclone from Georgia Cyclone at Six Flags Over Georgia, Steel Vengeance from Mean Streak at Cedar Point, and the original New Texas Giant from Texas Giant at Six Flags Over Texas. So obviously, first things first, RMC would not have had Texas Giant to work on for their first installation. So what would have been their first installation? And for reference, each of these what if questions is completely separate from one another, so the discussion about Six Flags in the last part does not apply here. So that would have been the interesting part to see. What coaster would RMC have started on if it wasn't Texas Giant at Six Flags Over Texas? I think this question brings up a great point because RMC has really benefited from coasters from the DIN Corporation, and there are a couple DIN coasters still operating that could be RMC'd in the future. Looking at you, Predator, even though I know you got the Titan track. As far as the DIN Corporation itself is concerned, they built some really big wooden coasters, but none of them are super well acclaimed outside of the Beast, which, as I mentioned, I'm not including in the DIN Corporation. So overall, as far as just the wood coasters are concerned, I don't think a whole lot would be different. I think the bigger factor here is RMC and how these DIN Corporation coasters have affected that company. So would RMC be as big today without them? And finally, the Sonic Shawn. What if Paramount hadn't sold off their parks? So again, let's put some context around this. In 2006, Cedar Fair purchased all 5 Paramount parks for $1.24 billion. So right there, would Cedar Fair become the big company that they are today? Probably not, though I do think they would have made some investments and some purchases of other parks, or maybe even build a new one somewhere along the line. So this isn't just impacting Paramount, this is also impacting Cedar Fair pretty directly. Now, I do want to throw out that for the most part, I think all these parks have been better since Cedar Fair took over. If you look at Paramount, the best coaster they added was probably Afterburn to Carowinds. This looks like a great, intense invert, but when you look at the coasters Cedar Fair has added to these parks, there's no contest which chain has made better investments. It's been Cedar Fair. So I think it's good that Cedar Fair made this purchase for a few reasons, but for each individual park, I think they're better off with Cedar Fair at the helm. Well, except for Great America. It's seriously so sad that that park is going to close. But anyway, it is interesting to see if Paramount would have taken care of these parks, because CBS didn't have any interest in operating theme parks, hence they sold them, but I guess in this scenario they still had a desire to. Maybe over time, their additions to their parks would have gotten better as well. So anyways, that's going to do it for part 3 of the biggest what ifs in the theme park industry. If you have an idea for the next episode, please comment it down below and I'll consider it. In the meantime, have a great day, and I'll see you all next time.